get along in a civilized relationship. They warn against all type of ordinal sin. They help us to build a foundation for the improvement of life. And the doctrine of reincarnation does not interfere with any of these commandments, because it requires them for the fulfillment of itself. It is only when the individual makes some type of dedication that he begins to grow. If he does not live a little better each life, there is a stagnation in nature. Actually, however, he can't be stagnate very long, because in those intervals between embodiments, the message comes through loud and clear. He has to face it. And out of having facing it, he becomes a step further along the path of his own immortality. Now, some also have asked how long part of the great cycle of life. It was, according to Pythagoras and most of the followers of the Eastern schools, that under normal conditions the individual is out of embodiment from 600 to 1200 years to accomplish two purposes. In the first place, there's a great importance which we seldom realize in the matter of re-embodiment, to realize that we are coming back into another world. If we come back into the same environment we went out of, the situation is infinitely more difficult and sterile. But if there is a great time in which a whole major move of civilization must inevitably, ultimately be in the right direction, then the individual comes back in an uprising surge of progress, and it goes with it. But if he came back too soon for no good reason, he would not have this experience. There are many times also in which individuals, some special purpose or reason, may come back sooner. And there's also sometimes it has been estimated that certain of the sages of long ago would not be able to return to grow until the world catches up with things at 10,000 years from now. But they ultimately will have to grow some more. But they must wait until lessons they need come along. If they have met the lessons that they needed up to now, they come back when the next new lesson gives opportunity. They come back to fulfill the old and prepare for the new. Now, in the Buddhist Tattva doctrine in India, there is a very interesting idea, which I think may be worth a simple thought at this time. Assuming that these bodhisattvas are essentially enlightened beings under the same laws that we are. There is no power that can break divine law, even God. Divine law is eternal. But in various times and various conditions, entities grow. And there's the story, of course, of the bodhisattva who is ready to depart. He had fulfilled all of the karma. He had paid every debt that he owed to society. There was no longer a bad sin holding him back or a worldly attitude to prevent his growth. And so, according to the legend, he stood on the edge of a great cliff that led out into the nirvana, the infinite, which, however, is not eternal. Nirvana is a state relating to growth within this world pattern. When this world period ends, there will be a new concept of reality. But anyway, this particular being, standing there, is supposed to have heard the cry of the dying bird, and as a result of that, a great mercifulness came over the being, and it took the vow that it would never go on and make that last final adjustment until it could take with it every other living creature. This was the great renunciation, in which a voluntary return to conditioned existence, although it has been outgrown, is part of the real inner life of this world Savior, the great sages, and the great teachers. They may have learned all there is to learn, but they cannot go because of a commitment inside themselves until they can share knowledge with every living creature. Now, there's another interesting phase of this problem that most people don't realize or pay much attention to, and that is that every living thing is also object to these laws. The tree, the bird, the flower. Everything is subject to the law of cause and effect on its own level. It must experience that which is next for itself. We cannot judge these experiences. We do not know what hoot owls need next. We do not know whether the small tree needs a particular thing. But the infinite life of things knows what everything needs. And so we find the law of reincarnation is held wherever there are sentient beings. And therefore it is perfectly possible for animals to return also, under the guidance and direction of their group spirit, for they have little lessons to learn. They have their way of unfolding the soul within them. For in the last analysis of things, the soul of the little bird is not less than the soul of man. All these things are growing under law, and that law is eternal love. But discipline is the only way in which that law can operate and can bring all things to the fulfillment of themselves. I don't think there is any virtue whatsoever in the individual trying to prepare in this world for reincarnation in the next. What he should do is not try to build a dream or a hope or meditate on or listen to something about a better future. We have to face two simple facts. The good future depends upon a good past. It depends upon solving the causes of a bad future. We know in ordinary court that dishonesty is usually punished, but we always hope that moral dishonesty won't be noticed. We also sometimes take refuge in atheism, which of course is the very, very large problem of destroying everything in order to get rid of our own limitations. Whereas it is perfectly possible for us to grow and unfold and perfect all of these things. And so all creatures have this particular propensity. They come back, they learn their own curious little lessons. The baby rabbit learns from its mother. There are no words. It must watch. Be ever mindful. It must crouch down when the mother crouches down. It must hop behind a bush when she does. These are the laws of survival in that world. But it is learning. And everything that lives is learning. It is learning to love, it's learning to fear. But gradually all this learning results in the evolution of these creatures until they become much more and much greater beings than they were before. Now we might also take a moment to consider something. What about the end of all of this? We've decided that we are able to gradually come into complete adjustment with that part of ourselves which comes down into embodiment, the incarnating ego. We expect that the soul power coming through the ego will finally fulfill the need of a virtuous life. The dedications will grow, and finally, little by little, the small debts of existence will be paid. Now, what does this all mean in terms of the future? Suppose we get all these debts paid. What then? Well, there's all kinds of answers. The brief one, of course, is, in theology, that if we get everything right and everything is correct, then we go to heaven. But this is a little dim also. And there's not too much enthusiasm generated by this thought. We would almost certainly exchange this prospect for a few more years of comfortable existence in this world. But in the philosophy of things, there's a very interesting thing. Because now we come into what you might call astrotheology. Here we come into the great systems of the cosmos. The systems in which the whole universe and hundreds of other universes and great galaxies and solar systems and all kinds of phenomena in the universe which we cannot see, but which was intuitively believed by some of the earlier scientists, such as Pythagoras and Ptolemy of Alexandria. We live in a universe that is one vast organism, one tremendous power, one great entity, and one of the, even beyond that, on beyond comprehension. We cannot go that far. But we are part of something that grows. We are a little bit reminded of the idea of the old businessman who trained his son to come after him in the business. And this is the same type of thing. We are all in training to take over our part of a bigger business. We are all here so that we can become powers in the unfoldment of greater systems of life. This little solar system, Mark Twain called it the wart, but this little solar system is just something out on the edge of the great universal system, one hardly noticeable. But here in the invisible life of the planet, it is making its part in its own growth. This planet will someday be a sun. And when it comes to this degree, it will have its own planets. And all those beings that grew up in it when it was an earth will go on, become parts of something more noble, more beautiful, more wonderful. But there will always be learning, there will always be living, and there will always be loving. These are the great keys of eternity. And we may go through vast galaxies, through huge complexes of solar systems, until finally we might say we come to the actual throne of the eternal. When we get there, we will know. Until then, we will not. But in every bit of growth, we're not just growing to get into this world and out, nor are we growing just to get a better adjustment in this world. We are growing to attain our citizenship in creation, our citizenship in the great plan of things. And everyone is a citizen. We may go jail a few times en route, but we'll all be citizens in good standing. But nature will never let us rest until we are. So we might as well get used to the idea as soon as possible. And so we are all part of this great unfolding mystery. And according to the Oriental thinkers, someday each of us will be a solar system, or more. We are now. We just don't know it. There are more parts in us now, more living things in us than on the planet. Millions of living things depend upon us to survive. And when we get mad, millions die of plague within our own flesh. We are growing up also as custodians of life. And wherever we make a false move intentionally, we have to pay. That false move is not going to be fatal. No one is going to be lost. There is no lost souls. There are only a few that are delayed a little longer than others because of the things that they do and the way they live, the way they think. But in the end, somewhere beyond is a tremendous blast of glory. Jacob Boehme, the German mystic, in 2 visions, had the experience of suddenly seeing the cosmos open. It was something so utterly unbelievable that he could hardly breathe. He never could describe it, any more than he could put down its details. But it was a tremendous, infinite reality from which we are locked by the restrictions of our sensory perceptions and the deficiencies of our integrities. But out there is where we're all going, because none of us can die. We can have all kinds of false attitudes on the subject. We can believe anything we want to. But the truth is, we are all eternal. Having come out as sparks from an infinite flame, we go on forever. And gradually, as we go, we create worlds. We create new orders of life. Here in this little world, we have inventors. We have artists. We have those who work for all kinds of constructive enterprises. And we have an educational system that is a shadow, a very faint shadow of the reality. This educational system starts us out in kindergarten. And I think we're going to have a major improvement any moment now, because we're going to have 2 years in kindergarten instead of 1, according to the new educational structure. But in the kindergarten,